So you're sitting there wondering, what the fuck is this wave management thing everybody keeps talking about? Well, lucky for you, I've got you covered. Minion waves are one of the most important and yet least understood things I have ever seen during my time playing League of Legends. They're the resource flow of gold and experience that dictates not only your power level, but your opponent's power level and where your allies and enemies will be located on the map at any given time. They've got a massive influence on player behavior, positioning in the lane, and they can be used to predict your opponents, protect you from enemies, set up ganks, deny resources, and much more. Understanding waves and learning to manipulate them in your favor is one of the most powerful things you can do to up your gameplay. So, let's learn. Every 30 seconds, a fresh batch of 6 to 7 minions will arrive in your lane. They'll meet in the middle and start killing each other. Without any interaction from champions, they're just going to stand there and die continuously as more arrive to replace them. However, the size of the waves becomes uneven for any reason. They will start ping-ponging back and forth across the lane. One side will grow bigger as the other grows smaller, and eventually they're going to move towards one of the towers where they'll die and it will reset back into the middle of the lane. First, let's get a handle on what happens to minions with no interference with champions. In this example, we got 2 minion waves in the center of the lane. Each side has 6 minions, and no champs or towers are hitting them. They're going to stay here in perpetuity. This is what we would call an even wave state. Now, picture a scenario where 2 of these red minions are dead. There's 6 blue minions, 4 red minions, and that means the blue wave is doing more damage to the red wave than the red wave does to the blue wave. So the red wave is going to die first. Once all those minions are gone, the remaining blue minions will march forwards towards the red tower. Now we got the opposite scenario. The red wave is doing more damage to the blue wave, and it'll die faster. And once those minions are gone, the red wave is moving towards the blue tower. Easy, right? So, let's get back to that first example with an even wave state. Say it's been about 20 seconds. A few of the minions in each wave have died, but the reinforcements are about to arrive. Now, nothing really changes here. All the minions will still meet up in the middle of the lane and start killing each other. However, imagine the same scenario, but the minions are over on the left side of the lane. So even though the number of minions is the same on both sides, the wave is actually going to start moving towards the red side very soon. Fast forward about 10 seconds, the blue reinforcements have arrived, and the red ones are still walking down the lane. Now, this means that there's a huge power imbalance between the two sides. The red minions are taking like 3 times as much damage as the blue ones, and they're going to get deleted before the rest of that wave shows up. By the time the red ones have arrived, we got quite an imbalance on our hands. The blue wave's probably 30% stronger than the red wave, and it's going to kill them at a much faster pace. Soon, another set of waves is going to arrive, and once again, the blue wave is going to get there first, exacerbating this snowball effect. Pretty soon, a giant blue wave is going to be crashing into that red tower. Now, once it arrives at the tower, it's going to die to tower shots, and if the next wave isn't there, the tower will clear all the minions, and the next set of waves will once again meet in the center of the lane. Now, imagine a slightly different scenario. The big blue wave has arrived at the right tower just as the next set of waves is coming out. So the red wave is now going to get caught onto that first blue wave, and its progress down the lane will be delayed. This starts a chain reaction that we call a bounce. Our wave goes into the tower, and the next set of waves is going to bounce back towards us. As those blue minions are dying to the tower, the second wave continues to walk down the lane. The blue wave is moving forwards, but the red wave is stuck behind that first wave. Eventually, the red wave will break through once they die, and they'll meet, but it won't be in the center of the lane. So now, they're located on the right half of the map, and closer to this incoming next red wave. So now, the opposite thing starts happening. The red wave is temporarily much larger than the blue wave, killing it faster and starting a snowball that moves towards the blue tower. In a lot of cases, this will keep happening back and forth over and over again. However, sometimes something really special happens. This is what we call a freeze. It's a unique wave state where the imbalanced number of minions offsets the fact that the waves are not in the center of the lane. In a freeze, the larger wave pushes in towards the tower, but the fact that the reinforcements arrive early on that side and push back cause it to stop moving back and forth, and instead the wave stays in the same place. This is what we call a freeze, and it will stay here indefinitely. Since the red wave has more minions, the blue wave dies faster. However, as the next set of waves comes down the lane, the blue side arrives first. Now, the blue side is temporarily larger, and the red side is dying faster. And as the red side gets thinned out, a second red wave arrives. And once again, the red side is larger. If it's left alone, this will continue over and over, and the wave will not move. So, now let's bring some champions into the equation. Now that we know where the wave is going to go and what it's going to do without our input, we can use our attacks and abilities to tactically change the number of opposing minions and determine how the wave is going to behave. Both teams are going to be standing close to the location of these dying minions in order to get experience and gold, and if we hit the wave more than our opponents, it's going to shove the wave towards them and move them slowly towards their tower. However, if we minimize our input and only last hit the minions while they mindlessly cast their abilities, the wave's going to move back towards us. And this has a lot of interesting implications because it determines where we're going to stand in the lane, and it gives us a lot of control. So, let's talk about the zones in the lane. Different parts of the lane have various levels of safety associated with them. From the blue team's perspective, the green area is relatively safe. There's not many angles for the enemy jungle to gank, and if you start losing a fight, it's pretty easy to retreat towards your tower quickly. Conversely, the red zone is very dangerous. It leaves you open to flanks from the enemy mid and jungle, and you've got a long way to run if the enemy support has any kind of tools to prevent your escape. Additionally, your enemies are much closer to the tower, so if you're trying to kill them, that's going to be difficult. Often, in a neutral game state, you're going to want to be positioned on your half of the lane, in the green or yellow zones. And once the wave starts getting into that red area, you'll quickly want to shove it under the tower and cause it to bounce back to your side so you can be safe again. Now, sometimes it's okay to be in the red zone, but usually this involves having some additional information. For example, maybe you know that the enemy mid and jungle are ganking topside and you're going to be completely safe, so you can step up. Or maybe you're just so strong that you don't care, and that's okay too. It's also important to consider the champions that are involved in your 2v2 matchup. So if you've got a melee support, they can't really do anything to the enemies that are standing under the tower, so they don't want to be pushed up like that. However, maybe you got a Lux that can take pot shots at the enemy ADC while they're farming, and that can be pretty good. You should also consider the enemies. Does their support have a way to hook you under that tower or prevent you from disengaging? Or is it something low threat like a Lulu where, she's not really going to do very much to you? There's a lot of different factors that can go into this. Just make sure you're making an informed decision and not pushing the waves on autopilot. So now that we know what the wave's going to do without our input, it's up to us to decide what we want it to do. We need to take into account the power levels, the location of our teammates, what our team wants to do, and other factors such as macro plays and champion specific things in order to decide where we want to position that wave. Let's say you're even or a little bit behind and you don't know where the enemy jungler is. You probably want to keep the wave on your half of the map. By making sure that the red wave is slightly larger than the blue wave, it's going to continuously push towards you. Gotta be careful though, if the wave gets too big, your minions will die and the wave will crash into your tower, starting a bounce back where the wave is moving out. And in this scenario, that's pretty dangerous because we're behind and we don't know where the jungler is, right? So we want to use our abilities to intelligently trim the wave such that it's always slightly larger than our wave and it stays where we want it. Now, imagine a similar scenario, but we're winning the fuck out of this lane. You got a few kills on your opponent and you're really not scared of them. Now is your time to flex on them. This is when you want to freeze the wave on your half the lane and walk past it. So now we're going to make them choose. In order to be in range of experience and gold, they're going to have to take a losing fight with us. Or they can stand back by their tower and slowly starve. Often, this is the most impactful play you can make during laning. You want to make sure you've warded when you've done this though, because they're going to be begging for that jungler to come break the freeze. Even in games when you're not that far ahead, you can implement this technique if one of the enemy laners recalls or leaves the lane, giving you a temporary power advantage over your opponent. Now, holding the wave on your side is also extremely useful if your jungle is in the area. So if you notice them clearing the lower quadrant, let the enemies push the wave up into your half of the map. This way, they gotta overextend in order to farm, and it makes it extremely easy for your jungler to wrap around behind them and kill them. Additionally, you might find yourself in a scenario where the enemy team recalls, but you don't need to. In that case, you might not have the wave clear to shove the wave in before they get back. So, you're just going to stand here and last hit and let the minions die while they're gone. If you have health to spare, you can even hold a much larger wave and allow it to kill the minions faster. Then, use your body to tank the wave and hold it off the tower until the next one arrives. You'll trade some of your health, but it gives you the ability to delete minions even faster the larger the red wave is compared to the blue one. Sometimes you can even set up a dive. Now, this is the riskiest but most impactful way to deny resources from the enemy laners. If you can stack up a big wave and shove it under the enemy tower, the minions are going to tank a lot of tower shots, which buys you time to walk under their tower uninhibited. As long as you don't deal damage to the enemies, the tower's not going to focus on you, so you can walk up right on top of them and make them panic. They'll miss last hits, they'll waste abilities, and often they'll run out of XP range. If they're low, you can even kill them for maximum resource denial. Even if you trade 1-for-1 and you both die, you've already farmed the equivalent wave, and theirs is dying under the tower. So, if you both die, they lose all these hundreds of gold and probably like half a level of experience. It's pretty powerful. Alternatively, maybe your jungler wants to do the dragon. Now, in this case, you want to shove the wave towards the enemy tower. This will keep them pinned under their tower last hitting minions and prevent them from discovering that your jungler's there or going to harass. Additionally, if a fight happens to break out because, say, the mid or the enemy jungle have rotated to that dragon, you get the first move, and your opponents are stuck with a bad choice. Either they have to lose hundreds of gold and experience, or they're going to be late to the fight and lose the dragon, and in either case, you're coming out ahead. Finally, let's say you need to recall. Ideally, you want to stack up a big wave and shove it at the enemy tower. Now, this is the time to blow all of your abilities, right? Because you're going to get mana back as soon as you get home. So, what you want to do is stack 2 waves, slow push the first, and then push as fast as you can on that second wave to shove in a large number of minions under the enemy tower. This does 2 things. 1, it holds them under the tower, killing those minions, so they're not going to interrupt your recall. And it slows them down if they want to recall after you and use the time that you're giving them. But also, it's going to cause a bounce back like we talked about earlier, where the wave is going to catch and start shoving towards you. And this will allow you to collect a giant wave of minions when you get back without really losing any. As you can see, manipulating waves can be a really powerful tool for providing safety, denying resources, and setting up plays. Have fun implementing these strategies in your next game, and good luck on the Rift.